Everybody's got their eyes on someone else. You wake up in the morning, and the first thing you do is check your phone, not for your goals, not for your plans, but to see what someone else is doing. You scroll past people's wins, people's highlight reels, and then wonder why you feel behind. Let me ask you something. How can you win your race if you're busy watching someone else run theirs? You see, most people lose focus because they've been trained to be spectators in life. They clap for others, they watch others, they analyze others, but they rarely look in the mirror and ask, what am I building today? Your focus is your most powerful weapon in a world that's designed to distract you. And the truth is, if the enemy can't destroy you, he'll distract you. And distraction always looks like opportunity if you haven't developed clarity. When you truly focus on yourself, something powerful starts to happen. You begin to realize how much energy you were wasting worrying about people who weren't even thinking about you. You start pulling your energy back from places it never belonged. You stop over-explaining, over-sharing, over-analyzing, and instead you start executing. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. Now, I'm not saying you isolate yourself or cut off relationships. No, but you do need to become selective with what gets your attention. You have to guard your mental real estate like it's prime property, because it is. If everyone's got access to your mind, your time, your peace, then no wonder you feel scattered. Focus brings clarity. Clarity brings power. And power produces results. The problem is most people are afraid to focus on themselves because it means they have to face themselves. When you quiet the noise, you're left alone with your own thoughts. And for some people, that silence is loud. But I'm telling you right now, that silence is where the breakthrough begins. That's where you figure out what's real and what's noise. That's where you learn how to show up for yourself, not just when people are watching, but especially when nobody's clapping. You've been giving everybody the best of you and giving yourself what's left. You've been investing in other people's dreams and neglecting your own. You've been so busy trying to keep up appearances, you haven't had time to build your foundation. But when you decide to focus on you, not the version people expect, not the image you try to maintain, but the real, raw, purpose-driven you, things begin to shift. And let me tell you, this is not about selfishness. This is about stewardship. You've been entrusted with potential. You've been given gifts, talents, ideas, dreams, and you've got a responsibility to develop them. That means you can't afford to be everywhere, involved in everything, pulled into every little conversation, every comment, every opinion. Some of you are letting people who don't even know your story dictate your direction. Why? Because you're focused outward when you should be focused inward. See, when you focus on yourself, the right things start to find you. The right people, the right opportunities, the right alignment. Why? Because you're no longer trying to chase, you're attracting. And you attract what you are, not what you pretend to be. But the only way you become is through focus. Through consistency, through intentional silence. Not announcing your every move, not trying to impress, but doing the work in the dark so the results shine in the light. And don't get discouraged when it feels like no one's noticing. You're not doing it for applause, you're doing it for alignment. When you focus on you, you stop needing constant validation. You stop trying to be seen because you realize that being ready is more important than being recognized. You don't need to be seen right now. You need to be sharpening, preparing, building. People will wonder what happened. They'll say, you've changed. Good, you were supposed to. Growth requires separation. Elevation requires isolation. You can't focus on building if you're constantly entertaining distractions. So here's what I want you to remember. When you focus on yourself and stay silent, you start becoming dangerous. Not in a loud way, not in a boastful way, but in a grounded, rooted, unstoppable way. You become the kind of person that doesn't need to talk about it because you live it. Stay locked in, stay quiet, stay working. Everybody's trying to prove something these days. Prove they're smart. Prove they're strong. Prove they're right. But let me tell you something, real strength doesn't make noise. It doesn't need to. The loudest person in the room is usually the one with the least confidence. The person who keeps talking, keeps explaining, keeps posting every little thing they're doing, that's not power. That's insecurity in disguise. Silence is misunderstood because most people associate it with weakness. But silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Silence is what allows you to process, to observe, to stay grounded when everyone else is rushing to speak, to be seen, to be heard. You don't need to jump into every conversation, respond to every comment, or justify every decision. You don't need to prove anything to anyone when you know who you are. You ever notice how the most successful people rarely talk about what they're going to do? They just do it. They don't announce every plan. They don't explain every step. They understand that silence protects vision. Some things lose power the moment you speak them too soon. And most people talk themselves right out of momentum because instead of working in private, they start broadcasting their journey in public before the foundation is even set. Sometimes silence is your strategy because when you speak too early, you invite opinions that can derail your purpose. You invite doubt, jealousy, distraction. Everybody's got something to say about your dream, especially when they don't have one of their own. That's why you've got to protect it in silence. Nurture it. Grow it. Develop it in private until it's strong enough to stand in public without collapsing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you to isolate yourself. I'm telling you to discern when to speak and when to move in silence. That's maturity. That's strength. That's what separates amateurs from professionals. Professionals don't need to announce every rep in the gym. They don't need to film every late night or every sacrifice. They just stay committed and let the results do the talking. You ever heard someone say talk is cheap? That's because words are easy. Anybody can say they're about it, but what's hard, what's rare is being disciplined enough to do it day in and day out without recognition, without applause, without validation. That's the real work. And that's the work most people avoid, so instead they talk. They post. They seek attention thinking it'll substitute for execution. But it never does. And you want to know why silence is so powerful? Because it keeps people guessing. It gives you the element of surprise. People can't sabotage what they don't see coming. They can't block moves they don't know you're making. You want peace? Move in silence. You want protection? Move in silence. You want power? Move in silence. Keep your head down, stay prayed up, and stay focused. I've seen too many people talk themselves out of purpose by trying to please people who were never meant to understand their calling. You're not required to explain your vision to people who weren't in the room when God gave it to you. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need approval to evolve. Some of you are shrinking your light because you're afraid it'll make others uncomfortable. But silence doesn't mean shrinking. It means standing tall in your truth without feeling the need to announce it. See, when you really step into your purpose, you realize that the journey is too sacred to put on display for entertainment. There's a season for sharing, yes, but there's also a season for sowing. And sowing is done in the dirt, away from the spotlight. It's quiet, it's messy, but it's necessary. Because without the silence of sowing, you'll never see the fruit of the harvest. Some of the most powerful moves you'll ever make will be the ones nobody sees coming. And that's how it should be. Let them think you fell off. Let them think you're quiet because you're lost. Let them think whatever they want. Because when the time is right, the results will speak for themselves. And when they ask, where have you been? You won't need to answer. Your growth will say it. Your peace will say it. Your success will say it. You're not here to perform. You're here to transform. Let your silence speak louder than your words. One of the most valuable things you'll ever learn on your journey is this. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone deserves to know what you're thinking, how you're moving, or even where you're headed. And I'm not talking about being arrogant. I'm talking about being aware. You've got to learn how to protect your energy like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. You only get so much focus in a day. You only get so much peace, so much patience, so much clarity, and the people you allow into your space will either multiply that energy or drain it. That's why staying silent isn't just about discipline. It's about self-preservation. It's about creating a space where your purpose can breathe, where your thoughts can develop, where your spirit can stay strong without constant interference. See, some of why all are too available, too accessible. You let everyone have a piece of you and then wonder why there's nothing left for you. You answer every call, entertain every conversation, get pulled into every little drama, and then you sit there exhausted, frustrated, empty. That's not because you're weak, it's because you're unprotected. You've got to start guarding your energy like it's sacred. Because it is. Let me tell you, not everyone who claps for you is for you. Not everyone who smiles in your face wants to see you win. And if you keep giving people a front row seat to your life just because they showed up, don't be surprised when they start critiquing your every move. You don't owe access to anyone just because they've been around. Loyalty is earned, and access is a privilege, not a right. There's nothing wrong with being private. There's nothing wrong with being selective. In fact, that's wisdom. You should be filtering your conversations, your time, your focus, because where focus goes, energy flows. And some of you are pouring your energy into dead-end relationships, circular conversations, meaningless distractions, all while your purpose is sitting there starving, waiting for you to return to it. You've got to learn how to protect your peace even when it makes people uncomfortable. You've got to be okay with people not understanding your silence, your distance, your growth. Some folks are addicted to chaos. They don't know how to function without noise, without drama. And when you start pulling back, when you start setting boundaries, when you start protecting your energy, they'll say you're acting funny. Let them. Let them talk. You're not responsible for how they interpret your healing. Because healing requires separation, elevation requires solitude, and you can't rise while you're still tied to the things that kept you low. You can't keep entertaining the same environments, the same voices, the same cycles and expect to grow. That's like planting a seed and then digging it up every day to check if it's growing. You've got to protect the soil, protect the environment, protect the process. And that means sometimes you're going to have to go quiet, not because you're hiding, but because you're building. Not because you're lost, but because you're locked in. There's a difference. You're not ignoring people out of pride. You're just finally prioritizing what matters. And for the first time, that includes you. Protecting your energy is about saying no unapologetically. Saying no to distractions. Saying no to pointless arguments. Saying no to proving yourself to people who already made up their minds about you. You don't have time to convince anybody of your worth when your life is the proof. Let your peace prove it. Let your consistency prove it. Let your elevation prove it. And here's the truth, you're not for everyone. And that's okay. You weren't created to be understood by everyone, accepted by everyone, liked by everyone. You were created to fulfill a purpose. And sometimes that means walking a path that looks lonely to the world, but feels right in your soul. Sometimes that means turning down opportunities that look good, but don't align with your calling. That means choosing peace over popularity, alignment over attention. You have to trust that silence can be your sanctuary. That protecting your energy doesn't mean you're cutting people off. It means you're cutting off access to the things that no longer serve the version of you you're becoming. And if people can't respect your boundaries, they're not meant to go with you to the next level. That's not cold, that's clarity. The higher you go, the quieter it gets. And that's by design. Because when you're flying at a certain altitude, you don't hear the noise from the ground. You don't hear every opinion, every criticism, every expectation. You're too focused on where you're going. And that's the power of protecting your energy. Guard your peace like your future depends on it, because it does. Everybody wants the results, but very few want the process. They want the spotlight, but they don't want the silence that comes before it. They want the stage, but they don't want the struggle behind the scenes. But let me tell you something, real growth, the kind that transforms your life from the inside out, it doesn't happen when the cameras are on. It happens in the quiet moments when nobody's watching, when there's no applause, no likes, no validation. Just you, your discipline, and your decision to keep showing up. See, the reason some people never get to where they say they want to go is because they underestimate the value of the unseen. They think if nobody sees it, it doesn't count. But that's not true. The work you do in silence is the foundation for everything the world eventually sees. A tree doesn't start growing at the branch, it starts growing at the root. And roots grow in the dark, underground, unnoticed. But without them, the tree can't stand. You've got to embrace the silent seasons. Those moments when it feels like nothing's moving, like no one sees you, like your work doesn't matter. Those are the moments that build your character. That's where consistency is tested. That's where your identity is forged. Because when you keep grinding, keep showing up, keep staying disciplined when there's no external reward, that's when you're becoming the version of you who can actually handle the blessing when it comes. And let's be real, everybody can be consistent when it's exciting, when motivation is high, when people are cheering you on, but can you still be consistent when it's boring, when it's quiet, when the hype is gone and it's just you in the process? That's where greatness is born. In the dark, in the ordinary, in the no one's clapping, but I'm still going moments. Most people don't want that. They want to microwave their destiny. Instant success, instant validation, instant results. But anything that comes fast usually fades just as quickly. And anything that's built to last is built slow, with intention, with patience, and most importantly, with silence. Because when you're not being distracted by the noise of the outside world, you can actually hear yourself. You can hear your thoughts, your intuition, your vision. That's where clarity comes from. You ever notice how the most powerful seasons of transformation in your life didn't feel powerful in the moment? They felt hard. They felt quiet. They felt lonely. But looking back, you can see how necessary they were. That season where you had to get serious about your habits. That season where you were healing from things you didn't even realize were holding you back. That season where you walked away from environments that didn't match your purpose. Those weren't loud transitions, but they were the most important ones. Because growth isn't always glamorous. It's not always pretty. Sometimes it looks like early mornings and late nights. Sometimes it looks like saying no when everything in you wants to say yes. Sometimes it looks like sitting in silence with yourself, confronting the parts of you that still need work, and choosing to do better even when no one's around to applaud you for it. And that's why silence is so powerful. Because it gives you space to grow without pressure. It gives you room to fail without shame. It gives you time to develop without judgment. That quiet space becomes your laboratory. That's where you experiment, evolve, and get stronger. And then when you do show up, you show up as someone who's prepared, not someone who's just performing. You see, when you do the work in silence, your results won't need an introduction. Your presence will carry weight because it's built on substance, not surface. You walk into rooms differently, not with arrogance, but with assurance. Not because you talk a lot, but because you become someone worth listening to. That's what happens when you grow in the quiet. And the best part is nobody can take that from you because it wasn't gifted, it was earned. Earned in the early hours, the late nights, the silent prayers, the lonely decisions, the disciplined actions. That's the kind of growth that lasts. That's the kind of foundation that can handle pressure. That's the kind of preparation that leads to true transformation. So don't resent the silent seasons. Don't rush through them. Embrace them, because they're not a punishment, they're preparation. Your quiet work is building a loud future. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is thinking that everybody's supposed to understand your path, that everybody's supposed to agree with your choices, support your vision, or even applaud your progress. But the truth is, the higher you go, the smaller your circle becomes. And the more focused you become, the more people will misunderstand you. And that's okay, because you're not doing this for their understanding, you're doing it for your purpose. See, people love the version of you that fits into their box, the version that's convenient for them, the version that makes them comfortable. But the moment you start evolving mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that's when the noise starts. That's when people begin to question your silence. They start saying things like, you've changed, or you're different now. And you know what? They're right, you have changed, you are different, because growth demands it. And if you're going to elevate, if you're going to step fully into who you were created to be, then you have to get comfortable being misunderstood. You have to get okay with people forming opinions about you based on a version of you that no longer exists. That's not your burden to carry. That's not your fight to fight. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace over chaos, for choosing purpose over popularity, for choosing focus over foolishness. You're not going to be able to bring everybody with you. Some people are only meant for the version of you that was playing small, the version that kept dimming your light so others wouldn't feel insecure. But now you're focused. Now you're silent. Now you're building. And the people who truly love you will respect that even if they don't fully understand it. What throws most people off is the pressure to keep proving themselves to those who don't matter. But listen, the moment you start needing less validation is the moment you start walking in real freedom. You don't need a round of applause to move forward. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need agreement to align with your purpose, because the truth is most people are not qualified to evaluate your vision. They weren't there when the fire was placed in your heart. They didn't see the nights you wrestled with doubt, the days you pushed through pain, the moments you chose discipline over distraction. So when people start misunderstanding your silence, when they say you're acting different, let them. Let them gossip. Let them speculate. Let them create whatever story helps them make sense of your evolution. You don't have time to correct every narrative. You don't have energy to explain every decision. Because every time you stop to explain yourself to people who aren't even on the same frequency, you lose momentum. Your job is not to be understood. Your job is to be obedient to the call on your life. And obedience will almost always confuse people who live by convenience. They won't get why you're not going out as much, why you're not responding to every text, why you're not jumping into the drama like you used to. And that's fine, because your silence isn't distance, it's direction. You're not pulling away out of arrogance, you're pulling away out of alignment. The ones who are supposed to be with you on this journey will catch the rhythm of your growth. They'll adjust to your silence. They'll support your space. But those who need constant attention, constant access, constant validation, they're not ready for where you're going. And if you keep trying to take everybody with you, you'll sabotage your own elevation just to make other people comfortable. And that's a price you can't afford to pay. Some seasons require you to disappear for a while, to get still, to get focused, to go within and do the deep work. And during that time, the world won't understand what's happening. But you will. You'll know you're not retreating, you're being refined. You're being strengthened. You're being prepared. So don't come out of that process early just to make people feel better. Don't water down your transformation so others can digest it more easily. You've got to be okay with the silence that comes with serious growth. You've got to be okay with being overlooked while you're being built. And when it's time, when the work is done, when the foundation is solid, your results will speak volumes. And the same people who once misunderstood your silence will come back asking how you did it. Let them wonder, your growth will be the answer. You ever notice how some of the loudest people are always the ones with the least fruit? Always talking about what they're going to do, how big their plans are, how successful they're about to be, but there's no results, no consistency, no growth, just noise. But if you pay close attention, the ones who are really doing something, they're not talking. They're too focused, too locked in, too busy executing. Because real winners don't need to announce their every move. They let the results speak. When you understand the power of silence and focus, you stop chasing applause and start chasing alignment. You stop looking for claps and start looking for clarity. You realize that everything doesn't need to be posted, shared, or explained. You're not in a race to be seen, you're in a process to become. And that's where the shift happens. That's when your life starts changing, because you stop trying to convince the world and you start showing up with results that can't be denied. You've got to get to a place where the fruit of your life is louder than your voice, where people can look at your discipline, your peace, your consistency, your elevation, and know exactly what season you've been in. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to prove anything. Your life will show it. Your progress will tell the story. And that's when you start walking with quiet confidence. Not because you think you're better, but because you know you've been through the fire and you didn't fold. You know the work you put in when nobody was watching. You know what you had to overcome just to stand where you're standing. And let me be clear, this doesn't mean you never speak. This doesn't mean you hide your gifts or play small. What it means is you let your excellence speak louder than your ego. You let your habits speak louder than your hype. Because when you're really doing the work, you don't have to yell, you just are. You embody the thing people are still pretending to be. And that authenticity, that alignment, that's what makes you unstoppable. Some people will never understand that. They think if it's not visible, it's not valuable. If it's not loud, it's not real. But there's a difference between being known and being impactful. Don't confuse attention with success. Don't confuse popularity with purpose. Some of the most powerful work you'll ever do will happen in silence, off camera, behind the scenes. That's where foundations are laid. That's where integrity is built. That's where real transformation takes place. And the thing is, you don't have to compete with anybody. You don't have to compare, copy, or chase anyone else's lane. Your results will find their way into the right rooms. Your name will come up in conversations you've never been in. But that only happens when you stay focused on your assignment and let your actions speak, not your feelings. Not your need to be seen, your actions. That's where the power is. See, people are watching. Even when you think they're not, they are. They see how you move. They see how you show up. They see how you respond when it's hard. And the more you stay consistent in private, the more undeniable your impact becomes in public. It's not about rushing to prove, it's about building to last. Because when it's real, you don't have to force it. Sometimes the best way to respond to doubt is with discipline. The best way to answer criticism is with clarity. The best way to deal with noise is through next level focus. You don't have to argue. You don't have to explain. You don't have to clap back. Just keep building, keep refining, keep working, keep becoming. Because when you do, the fruit will always find its way to the surface. And the most beautiful part, nobody can argue with results. They can talk about you, misunderstand you, question you. But when the fruit shows up, when the growth is evident, there's nothing left to say. Because the results silence the noise. The results prove the discipline. The results validate the silence. That's why you don't need to waste energy trying to be seen. Just make sure what you're doing is worth seeing. So don't let the world rush you into performing. Don't let pressure trick you into proving. Just keep watering your gift. Keep tending to your purpose. Keep showing up even in silence. Because when the time is right, your results will do all the talking you'll ever need. Let the fruit of your life speak louder than your words ever could.